Welcome back to my channel to talk about really weird, depraved things from ancient history. We're going to go with part 2 on the Romans and why they were very special when it came to their sexuality. If you learn something from this video, please comment below or like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel because your girl needs as much help as she can get, you know? Alright, so I think we left off last video with pederasty. I think. So let's just get stuck into it. The next on the list is the religious sex parties that they had in the name of religion. Yeah, you heard me right. So the Bacchanalia, which was the name of the parties, it was a fertility festival, and it started out, I think, in Greece and then came to southern Italy. And it started weird, but then it kind of got even weirder. So there was a wine god who was also a fertility god. His name was Dionysus, I think. And sort of, I think the fundamental beginnings of it were fertility, like trying to have babies. But essentially when it was introduced to Rome in Lower Italy, it had kind of taken on this secret nature, right? The parties were held in secret. The parties were held in secret, right? And so originally only females were able to attend, but then eventually males were able to attend too. And basically the idea was that you went to the party, you drank, and then you had intercourse with absolutely anyone or anything that you could. It was an orgy. Yeah. But it was like disguised under the fact that it was a religious like moment. These festivals started taking place 5 times a month, so like once a week, plus an extra day thrown in there. And they were wild. Like, as we know from the previous video, ancient Rome's tolerance for sexual things was pretty high. But these parties got so obscene and bad that the authorities had to step in and cancel them. Not only like ban them, but they had to threaten. They had to threaten people with torture if they continued doing these public orgy things. Like, I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. That happened. The historical source that we have for this is the historian Livy. He breathlessly describes the most unimaginable debauchery. Yeah, like, it was real bad. I can't even, like, YouTube has guidelines and I can't cross them, but it was bad. Like, the authorities stepping in and being like, hey, you literally can't do this. This cult continued to survive for centuries after. Let me show you some paintings just depicting some things. So you'll notice here that there are children and animals. That is a key. That's accurate. So I was looking for, it's quite a famous depiction of the Bacchanalia, or the cult-ish thingamabobs. Been a rather big day of work and I do not look as good as I looked this morning. Nonetheless, let's get cracking. On to the next debaucherous thing that the Romans did. Just a trigger warning on this one, like all of the topics that we've been discussing, this one's pretty savage and triggering. Mass infanticide. If you don't know what infanticide is, it's essentially when a baby is born, it's killed. So you might be thinking, as we've been going through this list, how did Romans control pregnancy? They didn't have the pill, and we know from historians that there was virtually no contraceptive methods that were viable or worked back in the Roman times. And the answer to that question is that they did not avoid pregnancy at all. They took the term abortion to its absolute limits and past the point of birth. And essentially, if a baby was not wanted, it was not against the cultural norms for the baby to be disposed of. Now, the method in which they used to do this was they literally placed the newborn baby onto a rubbish dump. That was sort of it. There's a lot of, there's a concept that a lot of these children were collected and then raised and then used in the slave trade. I think it's referred to as Corpius, which was a popular slave name, and that literally translates to found on a dung heap. So yeah, if someone ever describes our Western culture as violent, I guess at least we don't do that, you know? We've come somewhat of a way from mass infanticide. Right, we're getting to the pointy end. This is the second last topic, and it is perverted justice. When we use the term perverted justice today, we basically are commenting on how unfair a trial was or how unfair the result of a particular court issue was. Now, there is a historian named Vicky Leon. She specializes in Roman and Greek culture, and she writes that both the Romans and Greeks were fans of unusual punishments, and in the situation where the crime was adultery, they definitely were fans of very strange methods of perverted justice. If you were Roman and you had a wife, John and Becky definitely wouldn't have been their names. So someone sleeps with your wife, you then legally had the right to sodomize the guy that did the affair. Perverted justice. In court, it would be judged and ruled that you could then sodomize the person that did the affairing, but also with an audience, if you so chose. It's giving very like Black Mirror first episode. Yeah. The Romans being into young boys, they were very toxically masculine. So there was nothing more shameful than for a grown adult male to take the feminine role, the receiving role, you know? So basically, the legal right to sodomize somebody in public was to humiliate them and their manlyhood, for want of a better word. Basically to mark them or brand them as not a man for the rest of their life. Now, this is where things get even weirder, right? Because sometimes the male didn't want to sodomize the other male, so he'd do it with a radish. Like, you know, that vegetable that comes out of the ground? Yeah, they'd like put it in his bum in front of an audience. I did a little bit more research into the whole radish thing. Duplessis wrote obviously about the legal connections between radishes, anuses, adultery, and there is debate over the actual punishment, if it was just a radish, because in some accounts it appears that they were shoved with radishes, fish, and then had their pubic hair like burnt off. What was the goal of the radish, one might ask? Well, a radish was likely larger at that point in time than a carrot, like just based on like evolution of fruits and vegetables. So it would have probably would not have been like a round, small, little, because like when I think of a radish, I'm like the wee little things, you know? Not back then. A radish would have been like a large carrot. I'm thinking like a turnip. I don't really know how we can kind of like fact check that, like anyone, a herbologist or something, in the comments. Our final and most depraved things of ancient Rome, the emperors. Buckle up, boys. These dudes were cooked in the melon. You might notice that I'm like not even trying to be objective at this point, because these guys were just sick maniacs. Like, I'm done. I tried really hard at the start of part 1 to be like, let's be objective, historians, yeah. But I think I'm done. I don't think I can be objective anymore. So almost every ruler that was an emperor of Rome was categorically insane. Like, nearly. There was like there was a handful of normal ones. The rest were just nuts. I feel like maybe there was like a competition of like, you know, how crazy an emperor could get. I've not read that anywhere, but like it just feels that way. You know, like one emperor does one thing and then like the next emperor is like, let's times it by 2, you know? And I do believe that I will have to do a separate video on the craziest emperors to really go in detail about their craziness. I'll give you a overview of the reason why this is the last on the list. So first of all, there was Caligula, who, by the way, was... Foxy. Shh. Yeah, so first of all, there was Caligula, a personal fave. Like, when I hear his name, it infuriates me. His name was Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, but he got nicknamed Caligula, which meant little boot, because he was small and weird looking. He kind of did some good things in the early days, but then he became absolutely insane. I think he was injured, maybe. He was exorbitant and obsessed with perverse sex, and proclaimed himself to be a living god. He also had an insatiable bloodthirst, and he wasted so much money for the kingdom that he caused mass starvation and purposefully like rubbed it in the face of people. So yeah, that's just like the very tip of the iceberg with that bloke. Then there's Nero, which is like maybe a more commonly known psycho. Nero was even a worse madman than Caligula, who was his uncle. He had his wife, stepbrother, mother all killed. He personally kicked to death his lover Poppaea while she was pregnant with child. And he was recorded to just have these absolute hissy fits of absolute rage. He built a 100-foot tall bronze statue of himself. I think it was Caligula that had the 2 sex boats. Anyway, I will have to research that again to like refresh my memory, and we'll do a separate video on that. But that is the last that is the last point of the debauchery of Rome. I hope you learnt something. I'm not gonna say enjoyed yourself because like that would be weird, but I hope you learned something, and I hope you liked my video. Please share this with someone who also likes history, or subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.
See you later.
Bye.